All right. So, hi, everybody. Thank you all for joining us, whether you're joining us live or you're watching this later recorded. This is our monthly NACA leading conversations where we provide a free hour for everybody to just come and connect. We do presentations, we do conversations. This month, I'm super excited to be able to share with you all kittens, lots and lots of kittens. We know this is an area that impacts your day-to-day significantly during this season. And so naturally, when I think of kittens, I think of kitten nursery. And my former position was San Diego Humane Society. So I'm happy that one of my former colleagues, Jackie Noble, is here to share with you all the amazing kitten information that she has. And I'll introduce her real quick. So Jackie earned her master's in zoology from the University of Glasgow in 2009 and joined San Diego Humane Society in 2010. While she was pursuing her degree, she studied animal nutrition, behavior, and pathology, all of which directly apply to work being done at the kitten nursery. So, Jackie, I don't know if this is still your title, but I have in here nursery and foster manager. Or you, or
I
you?
am now the Director of Nursery and Placement.
Okay, I knew it was so I knew that was an old title. So Director of Nursery and Placement. So that is fantastic. We can't wait to hear all the things that you've got for the group today. So take it away.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining to learn about kittens today. Um, as Jerica mentioned, I work at San Diego Humane Society. I'm our Director of Nursery and Placement, and I've been here since 2010. I was hired on as a part-time nursery caregiver all those years ago, and my job now captures overseeing our kitten nursery, our foster program, and our rescue program at all of our campuses. So definitely a big job and a lot of kittens. So for today, I'm going to share with you a little bit of an overview about San Diego Humane Society in general and our kitten programs that we have. I'm going to share a case example of an experience I had when I found kittens for the first time, some resources, when to intervene, a little bit about aging and kitten pathways, some kitten care basics, and some education points that you can share with the public. So, um, I could talk about kittens forever when I am training the nursery caregivers. We do a full week of training, so there's going to be a lot to cram into an hour. And I'm trying to gear this towards more of in the field type information about kittens and stuff that will be useful in the potentially the positions that you're in. But there is a ton of kitten content out there in the world that and I will share some of those resources so you can learn more about kittens after. So San Diego Humane Society, these are our stats from last year. We admitted over 41,000 animals into our care, the bulk of those being our companion animals, about 29,000, and then the remainder being wildlife. We also take in wildlife in San Diego as well. For our companion animals, kittens under 8 weeks is actually a pretty big chunk of what we do. So almost 5,500 kittens under 8 weeks coming into our care between 2021 and 2022. Yet not for the faint-hearted in San Diego with the volume of kittens that we get in. Very much you will see higher volume of kittens in those states that have um, a lot of those good weather days. There is a link between cat breeding and hours of daylight. So a lot of the more northern states maybe don't have as long of a kitten season or as intense of a kitten season as some of the more southern states. We also took in just over 4,000 community cats and provided spay neuter vaccination services for community cats because we will definitely be talking about community cats today because they are the primary reason that there are so many kittens coming into animal shelters. And just to share some humane law enforcement information for San Diego Humane Society, we do have a 24/7 dispatch team. So we are serving the community on a 24-hour basis, and our officers saw over 18,000 animals last year, between the 46 active officers we have serving the 14 cities in last year. So pretty big responsibility we have here in San Diego to the animals that we are serving and supporting in our community. So to dive into kittens, I did want to share the first time I found kittens outside. So I had moved into a house in Oceanside in North County, San Diego, and I had been working at the kitten nursery for about a year at that point, and I had never once found kittens outside. Honestly, I was a little perplexed at where all of the kittens were coming from because I had never encountered them myself. And one night, my bedroom faced the backyard. I kept hearing meowing, and I was wondering if it was just kitten season getting to me or if there were actually kittens out there. And I talked to my roommates. No one else had heard meowing. We didn't see any kittens. But about a week later, my roommate's boyfriend was outside and he heard it too. So we knew there were kittens around. And the next day, we kind of heard them coming from our neighbor's backyard. So we heard him out there. He was shaking some dry food, and I peeked through. There's like a little hole in the fence, and I peeked through the hole, and I saw him shaking the food, and I saw all of these cats just coming out of this long grass towards him to be fed. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's happening right here, literally in my backyard. So decided with the support of one of my roommates, we would go to his house and not in uniform and just see if we could come and hang out and see the kittens and the cats in his backyard. And when we opened that conversation with him, he invited us back to his backyard and we saw just so many cats and kittens back there. And we started chatting to him, and he shared with us that his partner had passed away the year before, and it was his commitment to his partner that he would continue caring for these cats. And he shared he was very overwhelmed. They just keep having kittens. He didn't know any resources. He didn't know where to turn. He knew he had to do something and he was just very overwhelmed. So that's when we shared that we did work at the Humane Society, and we said, if you would like some support and like some help, we can help you. And he basically said, I'm out of town next weekend. You have permission to come into my backyard and do what you have to do. So we explained that we'd be trapping the cats. We'd get them spayed, neutered, vaccinated, and their ears would be tipped, and then they'd be returned to his backyard, and he could continue to care for the cats that he was dedicated to. And we would assess kind of the volume of kittens and see what we needed to do then. So he was so grateful. And over the course of that weekend, we were able to trap about 25 cats in his backyard. We were able to get them spayed and neutered, put them back, and we found a few litters of kittens back there as well. So we assessed the kittens and determined they were old enough to not be with mom anymore. And those actually came to the kitten nursery, and we got them big enough for their spays and neuters, and we adopted them out. So in the picture, I pulled up one of their records. So this is Jet. So I found a trio of 3 kittens under his kind of abandoned hot tub, and we called them Jacuzzi, Bubbles, and Jet. And this is Jet. And they went on to be adopted after their spay neuter surgeries. So over the course of supporting him with stepping up and getting those cats spayed and neutered, we saw this amazing turnaround in his backyard. Over the course of the next couple of weeks, he got some gardeners in, cut down the grass, he got new patio furniture, he got his hot tub working again. And you could just see that the impact that we had was not just on the animals and the kittens, it was on his life. And by supporting him, by doing the right thing for these cats and kittens, we were able to kind of get him back to being able to enjoy his backyard. and he just was scared to do anything back there because he didn't want to hurt the kittens. He didn't want to cut the grass. He didn't want to do any of that stuff. So that was my first experience finding kittens outside, and I think of that often when I'm receiving kittens from the community. Every kitten has a backstory and a cat attached to them, and also people that care about them as well. So keep all of that in mind as we talk through the training today and kind of the impact you'll have on the animals and the people as well. So a little bit about our kitten nursery. So prior to 2009 in San Diego, kittens were the most euthanized population of animals our county had. Kittens would come into shelters across the county, and there were no resources for them. And if there was no foster placement for them by the end of the day, or a rescue was unable to get them and they couldn't eat on their own, their only option was euthanasia. So we identified that as a thing we needed to resolve in our community. So in 2009, we did launch our kitten nursery, and between 2009 and 2022, it was a 24-hour on-site kitten nursery where we had bottle babies ranging from a couple of hours old all the way up to kittens that were 8 weeks old. And then we had moms and babies as well. In addition to the nursery, we had a foster program that gained some traction around 2014, 2015. I think fostering has become a lot more common for kittens in, the past few years, especially. And in our foster program at that time, we were focusing on weaned kittens, friendly moms and babies, and then we were sending out the bottle babies when we had fosters available. Um, and then last year, we shifted our model again, and we are no longer 24 hours on site. We have a caregiver team on site from 7 a.m. till 9:30 p.m., but all bottle babies go to foster by the end of the day. So it's a huge task here in San Diego. You can imagine of those 5,000 plus kittens, there are a lot of bottle babies included in that number. And we are dedicated to getting these bottle babies into foster care because they are so vulnerable. It's best for them to have that one-on-one attention from a foster caregiver. And so, yeah, that is our current model for kittens and bottle babies here at San Diego Humane Society, which is pretty traditional to most shelters across the country. Do not have a 24-hour on-site kitten nursery. So I think the model that we have presently is aligned with what a lot of the other shelters will have. And so this information will hopefully be useful for you all. So when you are considering kittens in the field, when you encounter them or when the public encounters them, how you respond is going to be determined by the resources you have as a shelter or the other resources available in the community. So you need to consider, does your shelter have a kitten program? Is there the ability to care for kittens if you bring them in from the outside world? And will that care be on site? Will it be through foster? Will the animals need to go to a rescue group? What ages can those programs support? Can they support only kittens that are eating on their own? Can they support bottle babies? And where are you at in your current capacity? Are you overwhelmed with kittens, or do you have open foster homes? Do you have people itching for kittens and wanting to raise them? So you have to take everything into account in your particular community when you're making the decision in the field to help a kitten, whether it be supporting them in the field or bringing them to an organization. And the time of day may impact that as well. So while we have officers in the field 24 hours, we no longer have 24-hour care on site. So we had to get creative, and we either utilize 24-hour vet clinics in the community, or we have an emergency 24-hour foster list that the officers can call if they find kittens that need support overnight. So you do have to consider time of day when you're making that call on a kitten that you're finding in the field as well. So this is a really, really great resource if you've not seen it. It is from Kitten Lady. So Hannah Shaw created this content, and there are a lot of amazing resources out there for what you do when you find a kitten outside. This particular resource is really great because it takes into account the condition of the animal, their age, their situation, and the ability in your community or your personal ability to help that kitten. And that those are all factors you need to consider before intervening with a kitten. The large majority of kittens coming into shelters are found outside and are born to community cats. It's like 90+%. Very few, particularly in San Diego, very few kittens are coming in as owner surrenders. It's really like 95+% here that are coming in from the outside. So a lot of the kittens that are coming into shelters are in great condition. They're nice and chunky. They clearly had a mom that was doing her job and she was caring for them. And what happens is a member of the public sees those kittens. They think that they need to intervene. They snag them. They either call the shelter and officers are called out to the scene, or they bring the kittens directly to the shelter. If the kittens are sick or injured, in poor condition, um, minimally responsive and things like that, of course, we do need to intervene and support those kittens. But the large majority of kittens that are coming into shelters are in good health. And unfortunately, what that means is that we don't go back and consider the cat and her breeding. If she's not altered because she's had babies, she will go back into heat and she will have another litter of kittens pretty rapidly after those kittens are removed from her. So it is really important that people don't steal kittens from the moms if the mom is doing her job, or if they're going to bring in the kittens, they need to go to the effort to also get the mom spayed and neutered or potentially bring her to the shelter as well. The age of the kitten will also determine whether you intervene or not. Kittens that are under 4 weeks old are pretty dependent on their mom for everything from being fed to help going to the bathroom. So kittens with their eyes closed are always going to be fully dependent on mom. And then once they're over 4 weeks, we're going to go into a little bit of aging to show you some pictures. Once they're kind of starting to cruise around, they're normally at the point where they can be weaned from the mom, and that is a good time to get them in, spayed and neutered, and get them adopted out. Because if they stay out too long, they have the potential to be under socialized and not be an adoptable kitten. So there is this like window in like the 4 to 8, 9, 10 week range where intervening and getting them in for adoption is an appropriate step to take. You do always still want to go back and get mom spayed and neutered though. You want to assess the situation. So if there are hazards around, if the location is unsafe, if there is really extreme weather happening, you potentially do have to intervene based off of the situation. If there's a little single kitten out potentially on the sidewalk, you want to look around to see if you can see that nest. If is there potentially moms moving the kittens and that one she's coming back for. So waiting and watching is really important before jumping in and just scooping up those kittens. And then we talked about ability. Does your shelter, does your community have the ability to support kittens? Or if you remove them from the outside world, are you sealing their fate through potentially having to euthanize them? And if they're in great condition and mom is nearby, removing them from that space may not be the best option for them. So this graphic is on Kitten Lady's website and it is downloadable. You can share it with your community, and it is a really, really nice graphic and pretty easy to understand as well. So it's a good one to have in your back pocket. And this is one of the graphics that we came up with for our community. Find a litter, be a sitter. Don't kidnap kittens. That's a pretty common message that you'll see a lot of shelters putting out at this time of year. I will say that when a community member has gone through the effort to remove kittens and bring them all the way down to the shelter, we are really going to struggle to convince them to go put them back. The time if you're an officer and you're in the field, you have this very unique window of time and opportunity to educate that finder and um, assess the situation more fully. It's very unlikely that someone that's already in front of us here at the shelter is gonna, take that kitten and put it back outside. So you potentially are going to have the ability to do more assessing around there. So you'll see a lot of these types of graphics around at this time of year from various shelters, and sometimes they take effect, but I would say a lot of the time people see kittens, they panic, and they snag them and they bring them to us without the mom. So we definitely have some education to do with the general community on kittens being born outside. So I wanted to touch on some aging and kitten pathway information just to cover some of the basics. So this is a very cute kitten. She was one I followed a litter of kittens every day of their life that they were at the shelter. So I had pictures every day, and this little one was called KITTEN. And it was earlier in my career, and it really showed me that progression of the kitten. So I've become pretty good at aging the babies. So a lot of people will look at their weights to age a kitten. So they'll say a 100-gram kitten is a newborn. Um, and then typically it's like 200 grams, 2 weeks, 300 grams, 3 weeks, 400 grams, 4 weeks. Like if you look at most weight charts, that's what it states. But age is not always weight based. When kittens are born outside, they are probably lagging behind in their weight. So age is actually based off of the characteristics of the kitten as a whole. I would recommend determining the age of a kitten before you weigh them and coming up with like a ballpark age. So the first thing you're going to look at is their eyes and whether they're open or closed. If a kitten's eyes are closed in the fact that they just haven't opened yet, not that they're like gooped shut with discharge or anything like that, but if they're a neonate kitten and their eyes are closed, they are under 2 weeks old. Their eyes are going to be opening in that like 10, 11, 12 day age range. So if you're seeing a baby and you're finding them their eyes are closed, that's a neonate kitten. They're fully dependent on mom. They need to be nursing. She helps stimulate them to go to the bathroom. So your first thing you're going to be looking at is, are the eyes open or closed? Once the eyes open, the other way to use the eyes is by looking at the color of them. So all kittens are born with blue eyes, and they will stay pretty bright blue right up until about the 4-week mark. So if a kitten has nice bright blue eyes, they are under 4 weeks old. And another cool thing to know about the eyes is the kittens can't fully focus. They start to get more focus in their vision around the 3-week mark. So if you're seeing a kitten with really big, dark, big pupils, that probably means that they're under the 3-week mark because their eyes are not focusing in on the light yet. And so you won't get that classic, like in the bottom picture where you see like the cat's eye look. You don't get that until they're kind of beyond the 3 going into the 4-week range. So their pupils can also, if not a lot of people have time to like go into that much detail, but it is another tip to look at if a kitten's eyes are open. And then as they're heading into the 4 to 5 week mark, you will start to see this beautiful marbling of the eyes where the greens or the yellows are starting to come in and their eyes are starting to change to that adult coloration. And they'll gradually start changing, and then all the way through till about 7 weeks. 7 into the 8-week mark, you start to see them going to fully, like their full adult coloration coming in. So you can see in that bottom picture, there's still some blue in there, but you can see those kind of greeny eyes are coming into play. So you can look at their eye color, and you can look at whether they're open or closed for the really little ones. The other thing you're going to look at is their teeth. So a newborn kitten does not have any teeth, and they will remain little gummy kittens until right around the 3-week mark. And at 3 weeks, they'll start to get their little front teeth, their incisors coming in. And this is a general rule of thumb. So 3 weeks would be the little incisors. 4 weeks, you're looking at the pointy canines starting to come in and erupt and come through. And at 5 weeks, you're looking at their premolars. They're starting to erupt and come through. And then beyond that, you're just looking at more full teeth coming through the gums. So those are things I always recommend. If you find a kitten, you're going to want to open their mouth for various reasons. You want to look at their tooth development. You're also going to be checking their gums to see if their gums are pale or not, because that can indicate if they're anemic, or if they're nice and bright and pink, that means they're in good shape. And you're also going to be looking at their palate to make sure they don't have a cleft palate. So there's a few reasons to look in the mouth, but teeth would be one to look at. If you're getting into older kittens, 8 weeks plus, just be careful where you put your fingers, because some of them may be under socialized and might be hissy by that stage. So always be mindful of your hands when you are checking in their mouths. So the other thing when you're aging a kitten you can look at is their ears. So newborn kitten, those babies under that 2-week range, their ears are pretty much closed over and close to their heads. They don't have that traditional like cat ear pointy look yet. And then when they're heading into that like 2.5, 3-week range, they get this adorable teddy bear look to them. Their ears are starting to unfold. They're kind of rounded, and they just have like very round heads with little kind of curved over ears. So if you're seeing the ear development in that stage, they're right in that kind of 3-week range. They're still too little to be weaned from mom if they're in that teddy bear range. And then when they head up over 4 weeks, that's when the classic pointy cat ear look starts to come into play. And then you'll see their ears kind of just get bigger and bigger and bigger from there until they look like a little tiny cat. And the other thing I look at when I age a kitten is their movement. So kitten under that 2-week mark is generally going to be crawling around. They're going to have their belly on the ground, and they're not going to be able to hold their weight under their legs yet. They're kind of out, their legs are like out to the side. By the time they're getting into the 3-week range, they're starting to walk around, and it's very clumsy. They're like half the time they're falling over, and they're just very slow and uncoordinated. Again, they've got the teddy bear ears. 3 weeks is like my favorite age of kitten because they just don't know what's going on in the world. They're so cute. They're little roly-poly things. So they'll still be very clumsy until they get into that 4-week and over range, where you'll start to see them become more coordinated, and they might be more playful because they can actually see and they can like explore the world around them a little bit more. So all of those things, when you're heading into the 4-week and up range, those are kittens that can go overnight without care. Typically, if they're in a foster home, it is great to give them extended hours of care. But if you are bringing them into the shelter environment, you can give them wet food, dry food. They're more able to survive on their own without that bottle feeding and that intervention. So the pictures on the right, the top right one, you're seeing a kitten in that 2.5 week range. You see the ears are just coming up. You're seeing the eyes are open, they're blue, and you see those pupils are pretty big, despite the fact that I think I was using a flash in that photo, that the pupils are still really big. And you see they're still in that like kind of crawling posture. They're not sitting all the way up yet. And in that bottom picture, we're creeping up into the 6-week range. So we have the ears are up, the kitten pupils are focusing, the eyes are changing color, and you can see while the kitten is crouched down, their legs are positioned under them. They are about to pounce on me, is what they're doing. So those are that is the same kitten in those two different age phases there. So aging is really, really important um, because of the following. So by aging a kitten accurately, we are going to determine what happens to them when they come to the shelter. Are they going to be able to get a vaccination or dewormed? So a kitten that is under 4 weeks old is typically too young to be vaccinated. And bringing them into the shelter can be really dangerous because if we can't vaccinate an animal, they're going to be more susceptible to disease. They have immature immune systems already. And so if we're bringing in those little guys under 4 weeks, they're very fragile, and they're going to potentially get exposed to disease at the shelter. Again, one of the reasons that we went the bottle baby route, the bottle baby foster route with our nursery model, because housing a bunch of unvaccinated animals at the shelter all together, while we had great disease practices, is not the smartest sheltering technique to have in place. And then deworming typically for kittens is going to start at 2 weeks old, and it's going to happen every 2 weeks until they're adopted. So your accurate aging is going to help determine vaccination and deworming. Is potentially going to determine where to house the kittens, if they can stay on site, if they need to go to foster care. If no fosters are available, are they going to have to potentially be euthanized if we don't have care? So we want to make sure that we're considering their age when bringing them in, and that we're aging accurately so that we're not accidentally bringing in kittens that are really, really young. It's going to determine their care needs, the diet that they're getting, if they need a litter box yet, if they need wet food versus formula. So there's a lot of things that age determines for a kitten. And one thing to note as well, age in combination with their weight and their body condition is going to determine if they're healthy or not. So you use all three of those things in combination to make a determination if a kitten is thriving or not thriving. At San Diego Humane Society, we do have an underage kitten protocol, and this protocol helps determine the pathway a kitten is going to take throughout the shelter. And aging is a core thing that you need to know how to do to be able to use that protocol. And I think a lot of shelter protocols, you need to know the appropriate age of the animal to use any protocol. So aging is by far a very, very important skill to have when you're dealing with kittens. And just wanted to share this. We won't go into too much detail, but our underage kitten protocol has a kitten assessment guide, which helps us determine if a kitten is in the treatable, manageable category, which would be like the thriving category, or if they're in the unhealthy, untreatable, or non-thriving category. And this helps us tag the animals appropriately and determine their next steps. I didn't include our weight chart in here because it's a lot for the eyeballs to handle on a screen, but we can definitely share resources after if you'd like. So we are going to look at the kitten's weight when we're assessing them, their body condition score, whether they're bright, alert, responsive, quiet, or potentially minimally responsive. We're checking their temperature. So I mentioned this a little bit later, but kittens under like the 3.5 week mark cannot regulate their own body temperature. So they can go get hypothermic very quickly without heat support. And then we're doing a head to toe exam on every kitten. Like I said, we're looking in their mouths to see their palates. We're checking, their faces, their nostrils, their eyes. We're looking at their hind end to see if they have an anus, if they have external genitalia present, because kittens can be born with various congenital issues. So we want to make sure that all the bits and bobs are where they're supposed to be on a kitten when we're doing a head to toe exam. We're going to be looking for external parasites. Fleas are very, very common on kittens that are found outside. And like I said, if we're looking at the gums, we can see if the kittens are anemic, or if they have nice pink gums, that means they're very likely in good shape. And then if they're in that treatable category, we kind of move them along to their next steps. We find them a foster home, or we can house them in the shelter if age appropriate. And if they're unhealthy, untreatable, we determine if they're going to stay with us with some weight goals and some care plan in place. If a rescue group can exit them, if it's after hours, they would be heading to an emergency veterinary clinic that we're partnered with, or in a case where the kitten is truly declining and suffering, urgent humane euthanasia would be the pathway for those kittens to make sure that they're not suffering. So our underage kitten protocol really helps shape the plan for each kitten that is coming into the shelter on any given day. Okay. For kitten care basics, this will be wrapped up in a few slides. I will share there is a wealth of very good information online about how to care for kittens of different ages. So I don't want to take up too much of your time going into all the details, but I will say again, kittenlady.org is an amazing resource for kitten care videos. On our website, we do have orphan kitten care guidelines, which we make available to the public. So there are a bunch of resources out there, and we're just going to hit on some of the key points for kittens of the kind of neonatal age and then the weaned age. So for the neonates, these are typically our bottle babies. Some people class that 0 to 2 weeks, some 0 to 4 weeks. For this, we'll just say they're unweaned, so they're under 4 weeks. Your number one thing is going to be keeping them warm. You cannot feed a kitten that is cold. A kitten that's hypothermic can very quickly decline. So if you're in the field and you find kittens, your priority should be keeping them warm if they're warm, or getting them warm if they're not, because they really need that support to be able to survive. So we have little hand warmers, like the ones for people. They're in the packets where you break them open and you shake them and it activates the heat. Our officers carry those in their vehicles, so if they find a kitten, they can at least give them a little bit of warmth in the crate or carrier with them while they're transporting them back to the shelter. We know that things happen when you're out in the field, and sometimes you have to, take another stop on the way back, but keeping the kittens warm is really important. You can buy a big case of those hand warmers on Amazon, and they stay good until you break them open and you shake them. So they're a really nice thing to have on hand if you ever are encountering kittens in the field. So before you feed a kitten, it needs to be warm, it needs to be doing well. And then at that point, you could assess the kitten and feed them a kitten-specific formula. It doesn't really matter what type or brand of kitten formula you use, as long as it's specific for kittens. You don't want to be using cow's milk or any other types of milk that you find at the grocery store. Kittens do have a unique digestive tract, and so having that specific kitten formula on hand is really, really helpful. They're going to be fed anywhere between that 3 to 4 hour mark, depending on their age in that range. And kittens are always going to be fed belly down, like in this picture, never on their backs, never standing up. The posture that you feed a kitten in can cause them to aspirate. So if they're on their back, the formula can go down the wrong way and actually into their lungs, and this can be really dangerous and cause aspiration pneumonia. So keeping them belly down when you feed them, and the bottle at this like 45-degree angle that you're seeing at the picture in the picture is really, really important. For kittens going to the bathroom, the mother cat or queen would be grooming them and stimulating them to pass urine and feces if they were with her. And so you do have to manually stimulate the kitten with a Kleenex and get them to pass urine and feces in that way. Out in the world, the queen would ingest the urine and feces when she's stimulating them so that the scent of that is not in the kitten nest. She ingests it to prevent predators from kind of finding the kittens, and she keeps them really, really clean. We do always suggest weighing kittens every single day in grams to make sure they're heading in the right direction. A kitten should be gaining weight every single day. And if they're not, that indicates that there's potentially something going on internally. Kittens should be clean. We should be putting them back on their heat source, um, wipe down, making sure they don't have milk on their faces, making sure they don't have crusted urine and feces on their fur. And then the other thing to note about kittens of this age, if they've been away from the queen for a period of time, they can sometimes redirect on each other and start suckling on each other. And they tend to focus this behavior around the genital tract, which can cause some damage. So if you ever encounter kittens that are actively nursing on each other, you want to make sure that they're moved into separate crates and are not left together, because that damage can be done really quickly. And I have seen kittens that, males in particular, if they are nursed on, it can cause urinary blockage. And for a kitten this small, it is not repairable and can be fatal to them. So if you are encountering kittens sucking on each other, you want to separate them out and away from each other. They typically outgrow the behavior by about 4 to 5 weeks of age, and at that point they can be reunited, but otherwise it can cause those health concerns. So that is something of note to be aware of with those kind of bottle baby age kittens. And we already touched on disease and disease control a little bit. Kittens are vulnerable at this age. They have immature immune systems. They're too young to be vaccinated. So you want to be using good disease control if you're handling lots of other animals. So you might want to wear gloves, or at least if you don't have gloves available to you, make sure that you're washing hands and not handling too many animals before handling those kittens, because they will be susceptible to those diseases that are out there. Another quick example of a kitten being bottle fed. So we have that 45-degree angle of the bottle. We're not squeezing the bottle because that can also cause aspiration. And the kittens typically take about, a few feeding cycles to latch on the bottle reliably.
3 days?
Yeah, for Jericho, 3 days is very dependent on the kittens. The artificial nipple, it's not mom, it's not, they do eventually latch, but it is worth noting that they probably won't latch right away because it is a novel, it's like a novel stimulus to them, and they're just not used to it yet. But eventually they'll get it. They do eventually latch. And then this is an example of a kitten being stimulated to go to the bathroom. So we're using a white Kleenex to expel the urine and the feces. And just using that pressure of like a cat licking you is the pressure you want to use to get them to pass the urine and feces. And then we use the white Kleenex so we can see the color of the urine and assess their hydration. So we're looking for a nice light yellow or clear urine to indicate that they're hydrated. If we're seeing a darker yellow or a dark urine, that indicates the kitten is potentially dehydrated and may need some fluid support from a vet or from someone that knows how to give subcutaneous fluids. So not all kittens will roll over like that to be stimulated. This kitten is clearly used to it happening. Sometimes they'll be on all fours and you're lifting up their tail, but that is it's part of the package deal with caring for these orphan babies. Is the feeding and the stimulation goes hand in hand. You have to be doing both. And this part is actually, a lot of members of the public don't know you have to do this. So if you're encountering kittens that have been, someone says, oh, I've been bottle feeding these kittens for 3 days and I've had them in my house. If they haven't been stimulating them, you might want to do this when you pick them up, because that this piece is something that members of the public might not know to do. So throw some Kleenex in your trucks as well. So for weaned kittens, or kittens that are weaning onto solids, not 4 weeks and up range, we're going to continue weighing them daily to keep track of their weights. Weaning is a confusing time for a kitten. Sometimes they will lose a little bit of weight as they're transitioning onto wet food. We're looking at their teeth, making the decision if we're offering wet food. At San Diego Humane Society, we wait until the canine teeth are coming in and are majority of the way through, so they're over 4 weeks old. And oftentimes the kittens don't just eat from a dish. You have to assist them getting started. So we call them starter bites, and you can see in the picture that's what's happening there. We're putting a little taste of wet food into that kitten's mouth because then they'll get the instinct. They'll taste it and they may go to the food bowl. You may need to do this for a few days to get them used to getting into that mode of eating from a dish. If they've been on the bottle, the transition onto solid food should be gradual and it can take several weeks. The kittens are all going to wean at various rates. If we don't have mom and they're 4 weeks old and they've not been on the bottle, they will get diarrhea because they are going from mama's milk straight onto wet food. Kittens that do that are almost 100% of the time going to get diarrhea. So diarrhea is very, very common if a kitten is not gradually weaned off mom or off of a bottle. So just be aware if you're bringing kittens into the shelter in that 4 or 5 week range, the care staff should prepare for diarrhea in shortly after they arrive and get introduced to wet food. It's kind of just part of the deal when you change a diet that rapidly and suddenly. So if we do have mom and we're able to do a gradual weaning and introduce wet food slowly, those kittens do great and they typically don't get diarrhea. And the same with the ones that are on the bottle. If we go slow, they're usually in better shape with their GI tract. One thing of note is kittens in this weaned kitten range should be using the litter box. They may start even using the litter box around that 3-week mark, and they should only be offered a non-clumping clay litter or a paper litter. These kittens should not be given a clumping litter because they're teething. Their instinct is to gonna put things in their mouths. If they put clumping litter in their mouth and ingest it, we can see some challenges in their digestive tract. So keep the litter non-clumping, or paper will be the most appropriate for kittens under that 8-week mark. And then once they hit over 4 weeks, they no longer need heat support. They are able to start regulating their own body temperature. So they're more able to survive in that way and sustain themselves in that way. There's an example of a weaning kitten. Weaning can be very messy. They, when they're starting to eat from the food bowl, so keeping them clean and trying to make sure redirect them into the food bowl is important. But yeah, we always want to make sure that the kittens are being wiped down and are going back to bed as clean as possible. This kitten was next level. He ate with his entire body. He really, really enjoyed his wet food. So we're getting into the last couple of slides. So I just wanted to share that if you're in the field, you have this very unique role in a kitten's journey, and you have an ability to educate the person that found these kittens and have an ability to intervene in a way that is really not something that's easy to do once the kitten gets to the shelter. So you have the ability to get firsthand information from the person, the exact location that kitten was found. Was it on the sidewalk? Was it off in the bushes? Is it in someone's backyard? And are there a billion other cats back there? So are you seeing other cats in the area? What condition are those cats that you're seeing around in? Does that area need help? Do they need spay neuter services? Do they need vaccine and microchipping services? Does it seem like a community that could benefit from a pet food distribution if your shelter has those resources? So if you're there and you're on the scene, collect as much information as you can and make sure you document that in the notes. Kittens will keep being born outside unless something is done and the queens are spayed. If there are kittens being born, there are intact males and females in that particular area. So we do have work to do to support that community or that individual person that's found them. You're having that face to face with the finder, so you can take that time to educate them and share the resources that you have on offer from your shelter. You can potentially train them to bottle feed, and they might be able to support those kittens. There are programs out there. You can search for like the Milkman program or the Wait Till 8 program. Other shelters have brought these into play where officers deliver small bottle baby feeding kits to members of the community to prevent kittens being euthanized at shelters that don't have kitten programs. So taking that moment to train those people helps those kittens survive through till adoption age. And while you're talking to that finder, ask some extra questions. Do they know who feeds the cats in the area? Because that person is who you need to contact to make sure everyone is getting spayed and neutered, because they're going to have that relationship with the cats and the animals. Just like my neighbor from earlier in this talk, by finding the person that is motivated to help these cats and feed them, you have the potential to work with that person to provide TNR to that area and prevent this cycle of kittens being born outside. So you have this really unique window of time and this opportunity to gather information, educate, and really impact the volume of kittens coming into your shelter. And if you're able to convince that finder to trap the queen of those kittens, there are some fun tips I have. You could encourage them to get a trap. We're fortunate that we do trap rentals at San Diego Humane Society. And you can play kitten vocalizations on YouTube and kind of put your phone behind the trap. The cat may go in to see if there are kittens. You can stimulate the kittens with a Kleenex to get that urine or feces on there. Put those in the trap because then it smells like they're kittens and you will attract the right cat. Or you can use the kittens themselves. We don't recommend putting the kittens in the trap, but putting them in a crate behind the trap and covering it up to try and lure in that queen. So there is some fun tips there to try and target the mom of those kittens, because if they can stay with her and we can reunite them, she can raise her babies, we can spay her, she's going to have a much better long-term life if we're able to really get to the source of those kittens and support them. So with that, I will end, and if I don't know if there's usually question time, open up for questions and just enjoy a cute picture of some kittens.
They're so cute. Yay. So many things, Jackie. The kittens, they're so cute, but so needy. They're
They
so
are very needy, and they are in large numbers at this time of year.
Yes, most definitely. Does anybody have any questions? You can type it in the chat, or you can unmute and ask Jackie. Is anybody seeing a lot of kittens already in your areas as well? You can use the chat, you can unmute. There's only a couple of us, so feel free to unmute. We're seeing lots of kittens in Rhode Island from Rebecca. Rebecca, what's your role? Are you field services? Are you in the shelter? Hi.
I'm actually I'm actually the director of a nonprofit called Rhode Island Kitten Kits.
Fantastic.
Yep. And what I do is I'm kind of like the middleman. I give supplies and support to foster homes who foster kittens through veterinary clinics, rescues, and shelters. So a lot of times, a lot of the foster-based rescues will give me a call, um, right away. And I'm usually super ready to teach people how to bottle feed, syringe feed. And I also work with the local 24-hour veterinary clinic where I give them emergency kits to have on hand. That way, Rhode Island has access to kitten supplies 24/7.
It's fantastic. Now
Yeah.
we talked before, right? I remember now you're,
Yes,
okay,
we chatted via email. Yes.
we did. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Let's see. We also, Crystal wrote in the chat, although I think it was actually a direct message. She says she has a litter of bottle babies as well. She's in Connecticut and she is an ACO. So, Crystal, thanks for joining us and for letting us know you're to have the bottle babies. Bottle babies are fun, exhausting, but fun. I'm enjoying my sleep right now at the moment till Jackie's team texts me again and says, come pick up more kittens.
And the ones we got in today so far, we have placement for, so
Yay.
hopefully no texting tonight.
I'm holding out for some puppies, Jackie.
Um, we do have two older puppies hanging out in the office today.
Oh, lovely.
Do you want just bottle baby puppies?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
picky. I
I
know.
was like, you don't want the older ones.
How not to have a picky foster.
I
When's that
mean,
session?
we did get one bottle baby puppy yesterday.
So,
She is in foster. She's got a pretty bad infection on her
oh,
leg, so she's on antibiotics and she's not the strongest right now. So she's with a medical foster, so we'll see how she does.
yeah. Well,
We
we'll have to
think,
do another one with puppies. I know that's very similar to kittens, but I wonder if we could do another maybe puppy session with the aging. That would be interesting.
yeah, puppies are a little different
Yeah,
with their aging than kittens are.
most definitely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys for joining us. Rebecca will be in touch via email again. And thank you, Jackie, for coming on. And this will be recorded and available in the NACA Members Resources Video Library for anybody who wants to watch it later. And thank you so much, Jackie. And I will pop in next time I'm on campus.
Yes,
Have a good
ma'am.
day, everybody.
Thank you.